You've probably seen the billboards. $70,000 starting, no experience needed, get your CDL in 4 weeks. It's one of the last jobs in America that still promises you can change your life in less time than it takes to grow a beard. But here's a question almost nobody asks. The exact same job, driving 40 tons of cargo down a public highway, a vehicle 20 times heavier than the car next to you, requires a 3-year paid apprenticeship in Germany. 3 years. Classroom, mechanic certification, supervised driving, a final exam before a state chamber of commerce. Same job, same vehicle, different country. Why does Texas trust someone with 4 weeks of training to handle the same machine Bavaria won't trust someone with anything less than 3 years and a continuing education cycle that never ends? The easy answer is that Americans are practical and Europeans are overregulated. That answer is wrong. The real answer involves a 13th century guild system, a forgotten 1986 federal law, and a quiet truth nobody says out loud, that one of these countries buries roughly 4 times more people on its highways every year than the other. And the gap touches every aisle of your grocery store, every package on your porch, every gallon of fuel in your tank. But let's start with what everyone gets wrong about training hours. The common assumption is that American CDL training is just a shorter version of European training. Same curriculum, fewer weeks. That's not what's happening. The U.S. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's entry-level driver training rule, the ELDT, went into full effect on February 7th, 2022. It is the first federal training requirement in the history of American trucking, and here is the part that lands strangely the first time you read it. The rule specifies a curriculum, 30+ knowledge topics, behind-the-wheel skill categories, but it specifies 0 minimum hours, not 1. The training provider decides when the trainee is proficient. That's the legal floor in the United States right now. Across the Atlantic, Directive 2003-59-EC requires 280 hours of structured initial qualification before a single commercial mile can be driven, or 140 hours if you take the accelerated path, including a mandatory 20 hours of individual driving with an instructor in the actual vehicle. That's the European floor, not the ceiling. The 140-hour version is already equal to the entire American program before you've added anything else. But here's the part that should break your brain a little. Before February 2022, the U.S. federal floor for becoming a licensed truck driver was pass a written test, pass a driving test. That's it. No mandated training of any kind for decades. An 80,000-pound truck at 65 miles per hour has an emergency stopping distance of roughly 520 feet, almost 2 football fields. The new American driver gets behind that vehicle the same week they finish their last classroom test. But 280 hours is still nowhere near 5 years. The European number stretches into something the American system genuinely doesn't have a category for. Here's what almost no American knows about how a German trucker is actually made. The standard pathway is not a course. It's a 3-year paid apprenticeship called Berufskraftfahrer-Ausbildung. Professional driver training, structured exactly like Germany's electrician apprenticeship, plumbing apprenticeship, and baker apprenticeship. Dual education, half the time at a vocational school, half the time at a working freight company. Year 1, the apprentice doesn't drive professionally at all. They learn vehicle mechanics, how to inspect a diesel engine, change a brake hose, secure cargo against a 40-ton shift. Before they touch the road, they have to understand the machine. Year 2, supervised driving begins. Year 3, independent driving, culminating in a practical exam before the Chamber of Industry and Commerce that includes mechanical tasks like patching a broken brake line on the side of a road. The apprentice is paid the entire time, between roughly 660 euros and 1,255 euros a month. They earn a state-recognized vocational qualification, the same legal weight as a journeyman certificate in any other German trade. But here's where the 5 years actually comes from. Article 8 of the EU directive. Every truck driver, every 5 years, for the entire length of their working career, must complete 35 hours of periodic training. It's not optional. It's not the new drivers only. A 60-year-old German driver with 4 decades of experience is legally required to sit through 35 hours of fresh, certified instruction every 5-year cycle, audited by a Code 95 stamp on his license. American trucking has nothing like this. If a driver completed his 4-week course in 1986, that training is still legally valid in 2026. 40 years untouched. The European system treats commercial driving as a moving target. The American system treats it as a one-time gate. Pass once, drive forever. And this difference is sitting in your kitchen right now. The package on your porch, the bottle in your fridge, the gasoline that filled your tank, all of it moved through a logistics chain. The chain in Europe ends with the driver in continuous certified training for 40 years. The chain in America often ends with a driver whose last formal instruction was a long time ago. But why? Why did 2 wealthy industrial democracies looking at the same physics, the same vehicles, the same risk arrive at completely opposite answers? Because the answer doesn't live in transportation policy. It lives in the 13th century. Germany's dual apprenticeship system is not a trucking idea, and it's not even an industrial era idea. It's medieval. The Zunft, the craft guilds of the 13th and 14th century Holy Roman Empire towns, formalized the master, journeyman, apprentice progression that is still legally encoded in modern German labor law. You didn't take a job, you entered a trade. That structure survived industrialization. It survived 2 world wars. In 1969, West Germany codified the modern dual training system into Berufserungsgesetz. When commercial trucking matured, it slid into the existing apprenticeship infrastructure like any other trade. Plumber, electrician, truck driver, same legal framework, same exam, same cultural respect. In a chain that goes back roughly 800 years. America's history could not be more different. Now, sit with this. Until April 1st, 1992, the United States did not have a federal commercial driver's license. For the entire read that twice, for the entire post-World War II industrial boom, the entire build-out of the interstate highway system, the 1970s freight expansion, many U.S. states allowed any holder of a regular passenger car license to legally drive an 80,000-pound tractor trailer. No federal standard existed. Drivers with bad records would obtain licenses in multiple states to spread out their convictions and stay on the road. The Commercial Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 1986 finally created the CDL, but it took 6 more years to take effect. The CDL is therefore newer than the personal computer. The first generation of fully CDL licensed American drivers has not yet retired. But here's the deeper detail. The Motor Carrier Act of 1980 had already deregulated the industry, collapsing freight rates and accelerating fleet demand for cheap, fast-trained replacements. The 4-week training pipeline didn't fail to develop into something longer. It was engineered to be 4 weeks because the post-deregulation industry needed bodies in seats faster than any apprenticeship could produce them. Therefore, the present-day gap isn't an opinion difference, it's historical accident. One nation inherited an 800-year-old training framework, the other built its system in a hurry during an oil crisis era deregulation. And that accident is about to arrive in your life in a very specific way. The 2022 CDC analysis of road traffic deaths in 28 high-income countries put the United States at 12.76 deaths per 100,000 population. Germany was at 3.35. France was at 4.98. The Netherlands was 3.72. The US road network is between 3 and 4 times more lethal than the road network of the European countries it gets compared to. And it's getting worse. US pedestrian death rates rose roughly 50% between 2013 and 2022, while the median high-income country fell about 25%. Trucks are not the entire explanation, but they are part of it. And training depth is one of the only factors that consistently moves the safety dial. The bottle of olive oil on your shelf, if it's imported from Italy, it traveled the European leg with a driver who completed at least 280 hours of structured initial qualification and is in a 35-hour retraining cycle for life. The same bottle on the American leg was driven by someone whose federal training requirement is complete a curriculum, no minimum hours specified. The package Amazon dropped at your door, the gasoline at the pump, the propane behind the gas station, the cement going to the construction site near your kid's school, the school bus your kid rode this morning. Every one of those operations rests on a national decision about how long it takes to qualify someone to drive a heavy vehicle. And those national decisions don't average, they diverge. So here's where you actually land. You came into this thinking the difference was about hours, 4 weeks against 5 years, a bureaucracy gap. What you are actually looking at is a fork 2 countries took 80 years ago and never came back from. Germany decided in 1969, building on a guild framework from the 13th century, that anyone driving a 40-ton vehicle on a public highway is practicing a skilled trade, the same legal category as a master electrician. The United States decided in 1980 to deregulate. In 1986, to finally create a federal license. In 1992, to actually enforce one. And in 2022, to write a curriculum that still doesn't specify a single mandatory hour of training. Same job, same vehicle, 2 completely different definitions of what qualified means. That billboard, $70,000, training, no experience needed, 4-week CDL, is, in Germany, an ad for a job that legally cannot be advertised that way because the role is regulated as a state-recognized trade. You're not just looking at a difference in training programs, you're looking at the gap between a country that treats commercial driving as a profession and a country that treats it as the job you take when nothing else worked. And if you think that gap is wide, wait until we get into why the US specifically chose the path it did, what it knew about the safety numbers when it chose, and what it would actually cost to close the gap now.